So just a couple of things before we jump into what we're actually doing today. I did put your grades in gradebook from last week. I know I said I might wait just so there wasn't only one or two things in there, but I know there was some problems with the resume videos on the other website, the Applied Digital Skills. If your score is incorrect, maybe you haven't checked yet, you can check now or after class. Just reach out to me and we can kind of figure out what's going on and make adjustments as needed. Your vision boards, like I said, I'm about halfway done grading them, and it's not because I just haven't thought about it. Remember, I'm trying to just space them out because I am taking time to read through all of them and make sure I'm trying to kind of attach what's on your vision board to your name. Some of you added pictures, so I can attach it to a face as well, but not most of you did. Remember, if you wanted to go back and add your true purpose for money statement based on our presentation the other day, you can do that and then just tell me right in there that you resubmitted it because of that, and it won't be late. And if I did already grade yours, some of them already graded, remember, you can always go back and edit it. Your vision board should always just be kind of a work in progress, and nothing is concrete in there. All right, so I think that's it for the updates I have. We are all here now. So yesterday we were talking about the job market. We talked about how it's different from the past for several reasons. One, because of COVID, we're dealing with this, and how the job market, there's not as many jobs currently available because of the pandemic. But before the pandemic, we were saying just how the job market has changed over time. With all of the technology and the more jobs available, all the automation and different things that have kind of come into play. And then also yesterday we talked about, typically speaking, again, it's not for everybody, but typically speaking, the higher education you get, the more chances, the better chances you have of being employed, as well as having a higher salary. So that's just kind of recapping from yesterday. You had those bookwork questions. If you have questions on those, remember, none of them should say I don't know or be blank because you don't know. You can email me, you can send me a private chat, whatever is going to work best for you. And that's why you have a few days, to turn it in at the end of the week. But jumping into section 2, let me open my chat. So I'm going to type the question and you guys can either say your answers out loud, you can type them back to me, or type them for the whole class to see, whatever you prefer. What do you know about what is currently going on in our economy? So what do you know about what is currently going on in our economy? So, all right, giving people a little bit more time to type in. I've gotten a handful of private messages. Yeah, so mostly what I'm seeing is that we're not doing too well. We're in a recession because of the pandemic. That's kind of the theme I'm seeing. Jobs in healthcare are more in need. We know that they are being kind of spread thin right now. Employment is low, which we talked about unemployment yesterday. Capitalism ain't built for this. Yeah, so overall, most of us kind of agree that we're not doing too well, and it's no fault of our own. We're in this recession, we're in this pandemic. Like I said, hopefully it's the only one we experience in our lifetime. I don't think anyone would have predicted it. So this is kind of a different perspective. Many places, businesses aren't doing so well, but companies based around things you can do at home are doing better than usual. GameStop stocks skyrocketed. We know certain companies, Amazon and Walmart, have been doing very well during this pandemic, just based on what they offer. A lot of people are ordering things online to avoid going out. So different places are doing well, but overall, the economy is not doing great. And we're not going to go too much into that because that's more of your econ stuff, but this section in our book is based on the economy, so it is a lot like econ. Just real quick, if you click on participants at the bottom of your screen, hopefully you have buttons that say like yes and no, go slower, go faster. It's part of the new update. Real quick, can you just tell me with that yes or no button, if you have it, if you've taken econ? Just kind of curious where everyone is. And it gets us practice with these buttons. If you don't have the buttons, just you can type it in the chat and that'll let me know you don't have the buttons. Again, they're under participants, not under the chat. Okay. All right, so it's just trying to gauge where we are because, like I said, this one section might be a little repetitive if you already had econ. If you're taking econ now, maybe you've gotten into this, maybe not. It lets me know how deep into some of these things to go. Next question. And I think if you don't unclick your answer, it stays there like the whole time. But you can use that as a tool. If I keep it open, if I need to go slower or something, if I'm going too fast, you can always click on that. Or if I'm boring you, you can click go faster and let me know that way also. So the next question, why are you sometimes willing to pay high prices for products or services? So why are you sometimes willing to pay high prices for products or services? Okay, so a handful of people have said the quality, when supply does not meet demand, which yes, we will talk a little bit about supply and demand today. More appealing out of convenience. Definitely people will pay higher prices for convenience sometimes. The brand, which not many people have said that, but yeah, sometimes we're just paying for a name brand. Kind of trying to make sure I read through all of these. You need it in the moment, or we believe we need them. That kind of goes back to that destructive cycle, circle of wealth that we were talking about. You think you need something and kind of the new one. So if you're stuck in that circle, that destructive circle of wealth, it gives you that same idea that you do think you need it. You're willing to pay this higher price. Sometimes the name brand comes with a better quality. Sometimes you're just paying for the name brand because we think that's going to be the best option. Myself personally, I have an iPhone. I prefer iPhones. I've never really used the other ones to know do they have the same features and the same quality? Will I get the same thing out of them? I'm just biased and like what I like. And not knowing if something cheaper would give me the same quality. Okay. So we'll kind of jump into our slides now. So those are kind of a preview to part of what we'll be talking about. So remember, we are going to take your notes. So your notes today are going to come right after you took wherever you ended your notes yesterday. So if you yesterday took notes in a Google Doc, you're using that same Google Doc. Don't open a new one. Don't start a new one. You'll just put it right underneath and just title it with this title for today. You can date it as well. So today, section 1-2 is the economy and your post-secondary education. Again, you don't need to write down the objectives. It's just kind of letting you know where we're headed. So what we're going to be doing today, describe how the economy can affect prices and income, discuss the cost of options for higher education and post-secondary training, and explain how to pay for college and other education programs. All right. So again, that's where we're headed today. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so if you understand the state of the economy, it'll help you make better financial decisions. So economy, the definition here is all of the activities related to making and distributing goods and services in a geographic area or country. So economics is the study of this, how choices are made. But the economy is all of the activities related to making and distributing goods and services in a geographic area or country. So the United States has a market economy, which is an economy based on the laws of supply and demand, which determine prices. So an economy based on the laws of supply and demand, which determine prices. So the price of an item is set at a point that consumers are willing to pay and sellers are willing to accept, basically. Supply is the quantity of goods and services that producers are willing and able to provide. So how much of it is available to you? And demand is the willingness and ability of consumers to buy goods and services. So if demand exceeds supply, if a lot of people want it and they didn't make very money, then they increase the cost. And vice versa, if supply is greater than the demand, they made a lot of this product, then you might see the price in it drop. So if you choose to work in a career field that is growing and a job in demand, you have a better chance of earning a good income. So we're talking about how some jobs kind of become outdated. And so you want to kind of watch out for those. But if you work in a career field that is growing and a job in demand, you have a better chance of earning a good income. So yes, you should be writing these definitions in your notes, either handwriting your notes or typing, whatever you prefer. Again, if I'm going too fast or too slow, let me know. The PowerPoint is posted, but you can push those buttons easily. Sorry, I don't know how I clicked so far. All right, so the economy goes through stages in the business cycle. So the definition here of business cycle is the alternating periods of growth and decline in the economy. You do want to get this picture in your notes, so you can either just, if you're handwriting your notes, you can draw it. If you're typing, you can screenshot it. You can copy and paste it from the PowerPoint. You can try to draw it if you use Google Draw or something like that I'm not very familiar with. But basically, if you follow along, so we have the peak and then the decline, the bottom is the trough. When we're in that, we're in a recession. And then that's an economic contraction. And then the economic expansion is when we're in recovery. If the peak goes higher than the previous peak, then that's considered growth. Every peak isn't going to be higher than the previous peak, so there won't always be growth there. This is just an example showing growth. And then the trough down there at the bottom, we don't know typically when we've hit it until we start recovering. So I'll give you a minute if you need to copy this down. Yeah, and again, as many of you said, we are currently in a recession. We're on the decline. Okay, so moving, kind of shifting gears to the next part of this section is, what are the costs of education? So tuition is the expense paid by students for instruction at a school. And then other costs that typically come with it are housing, books and supplies, fees that could be to cover certain programs or equipments or supplies, and then living expenses, food, clothing, transportation. So if you are going to a junior college and living at home, you might not have to worry about, you know, housing, living expenses. Your parents might still be helping you. If you're out on your own, there's kind of a lot that goes into it, and just to kind of think about beyond tuition. So you pay money to the school, but then you have to pay for everything else. So what are kind of some ways students can pay for college? And I'll type that in the chat just to kind of open my chat box again. So what are some ways people can pay for college? All right, so a lot of people are saying loans, scholarships, grants, financial aid, their parents, get a job. So those are all different options. We're going to talk about those in a few minutes. That's kind of why, now that we're shifting gears here. Another question I want to ask, just to kind of hopefully see where everyone is. Have you heard of FAFSA? It's just a yes or no question. You can either type yes or no or use those yes and no buttons. Okay. So quite a few more yeses than my previous class, but still quite a few no's. And I'm not going to tell you what it is. We're going to watch a video on it in a minute. So just curious to make sure if everyone had heard of it, I wouldn't need to kind of go into that. All right, so cost of education. We know education can be expensive. This is a map. You do not need to kind of write this down. It just gives you a vague idea. It's broken up into different regions. The type of school, public 2-year, public 4-year, private 4-year. We are grouped with the West, and so you can see the costs there for the West. But we also know being in California tends to be higher than these other states here in the West. So if you're staying in California, you can assume yours would be a little bit higher. But if you're going, some of you know you want to go out of state for college, might just give you a very broad idea. You can see up in the New England area is quite a bit more expensive. Again, just kind of gives you a little perspective. All right, so what are your options for continuing education? So we have a bachelor's degree, associate's degree, at a 2-year community college. You can do a career or technical skill, military, or apprenticeships. And remember, we talked about apprenticeships being on-the-job training. What's wrong? Sorry. Okay. And I know based on our survey last week, more than half of you, your plan was a 2-year community colleges. So I'm sure you're aware of these options, hopefully. What I found interesting is in my 3 classes, nobody told me that their option was the military. Some people were still undecided, so it could happen. I just found that interesting. All right. And then... Okay, so financial aid. So financial aid, so how are you going to pay for this education or training? Financial aid is the money you receive from an outside source to help pay for education. That's the definition there. That's the part you need to kind of know and write down. Money you receive from an outside source to help pay for education. So it can come from the federal government, state, and local banks. Via the FAFSA, that's how you're going to get money from the government, which is the free application for federal student aid. And the FAFSA, we're going to watch this video, is the key that unlocks many of your financial aid options. So I'll give you a little bit of time to write that down, and then I will open the video. Okay. So let me share this now for you.
Chances are you started thinking about college or technical college, where you're going to attend and how you pay for it. You have to decide where you're going, but we can help you figure out how you're going to pay for it. In this episode, we'll give an overview of one of the primary phases of paying for post-secondary education. To be eligible for any state or federal student loans and grants or financial aid from the school you're attending, you'll have to fill out the FAFSA. FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Based on your financial information, this is how the federal government, your state, and your college determine how much money you're eligible for in loans and grants. Loans must be paid back at the end of college or if you stop attending, while grants don't have to be paid back at all, as long as you meet the eligibility requirements for the grant. The FAFSA is easy to fill out and doesn't take long. You'll just need a few things before you get started. We'll show you a list in a few minutes. You can use the paper form and mail it, but it's much faster and easier to use the online version at studentaid.gov or on the My Student Aid mobile app. As we begin to explain more about the process, you'll probably need your parents to provide information about their income and financial situation. In fact, they may choose to complete a portion of it on their own. It's important to know the application deadlines. Each state and school have their own deadlines. The federal deadline is at the end of June. It's important when you look at the federal student aid website that you determine the dates for your own state and for the schools for which you're applying. Make sure you complete your FAFSA before the earliest deadline. Before you begin completing the FAFSA online, you'll want to have the necessary information ready. One way to prepare is to use the FAFSA on the web worksheet. The worksheet provides checklists and boxes to fill the required information, which you can then use to fill in the FAFSA online. The information and documents you'll need to complete the FAFSA include the following. According to the FAFSA site, here are the things you'll need: your social security number, your driver's license number if you have one, your alien registration number if you are not a U.S. citizen, federal tax information or tax returns including IRS W-2 information for you and your spouse if you are married, and for your parents if you are a dependent student, IRS 1040, information on cash, savings and checking account balances, investments including stocks and bonds and real estate. We'll give a brief high-level overview of what to expect when you begin completing the FAFSA online. You enter your basic information and we'll have a chance to review it. You'll be given an opportunity to set up a federal student aid PIN or personal identification number. You use this number to sign your FAFSA digitally. To set up your PIN, simply click the button that says apply for a PIN and follow the instructions. You'll also be able to create a password. The password and PIN are different, but make sure to remember them both. The password allows your form to save automatically every couple of minutes, so you can always log into the system and pick up right where you left off previously. The FAFSA collects information about student demographics, school selection, dependency status, parent demographics, and financial information. Demographic questions determine student eligibility. Some questions include, are you a citizen? No, but I am an eligible non-citizen. No, I am not a citizen or eligible non-citizen. Will you be graduating from high school? Is this your first year of college? What type of degree are you seeking? And how much schooling have either of your parents had? You'll use a drop-down to select up to 10 colleges you're applying to and add them to your list. Alternatively, if you know the codes from your colleges, you can enter them. You'll select your housing plans for each of your potential schools, whether you're planning to live on campus at one school but off campus at another, and maybe even with parents or guardians at a third school. You'll have the chance to make all these selections on your school selection summary page. The FAFSA includes questions to determine dependency too. For example, are you married? Are you working on a master's degree? Do you have children or other dependents? If you're uncertain about any of these, ask your parent, guardian, or school counselor. You'll probably want to get your parents or guardians' help for the parent demographic section. That section asks for information like their social security numbers, dates of birth, and household size. You'll want a parent's help with the financial section too. Remember, you'll need recent tax forms, bank account statements, and any investment information you or your parents have. You can even complete the FAFSA using the information reported electronically from the IRS. FAFSA applicants provide income information from the prior year. The tax questions are straightforward and come mostly from your W-2 and 1040 forms. Remember, if you set up a password, you can pause and look at the forms and come back to the FAFSA as often as necessary. The FAFSA requires you to enter your tax information. Again, you might be able to import this right from the IRS. The FAFSA has questions about yours and your family's assets. Keep in mind any checking or savings accounts or savings bonds you have when answering the questions about your net worth. Your parents or family will report assets too, such as bank account balances, the value of their investments. This does not include retirement investments, and the net worth of any businesses they own. At the end of the FAFSA, you'll have the opportunity to review your information. When you're ready, you'll use the PIN you created earlier to file your FAFSA. Completing the FAFSA is a major step in your educational journey. If you gather the documents you need before you start and do a thorough job on the FAFSA, you'll be off to a great start. For more information, check out studentaid.gov.
Okay, so that's a little bit about the FAFSA. Some of you are already familiar with it, but again, it's going to unlock many financial aid options for you, even if you are considering student loans. So these are the most common forms of financial aid. So there's student loans, which you can get subsidized or unsubsidized. So subsidized is a loan on which the student pays no interest until he or she is graduated or no longer in school. Unsubsidized starts charging interest from the time the loan is made. So just for example, hypothetical numbers, say you're going to a 4-year college and you took out a $5,000 loan. If it's subsidized, when you graduate in 4 years or 5 years, however long it takes you, you're still only owe $5,000 at that time. If it's unsubsidized and you took out $5,000 your freshman year, when you graduate 4 years later, you might now owe $5,300. So the cost of the loan is going up and charging you interest even before you graduate, and you're not making payments. Gift aid, which is grants and scholarships, are money given to pay for educational expenses that does not have to be repaid. So gift aid, grants and scholarships, you do not have to repay them. A scholarship is a cash allowance awarded to a student to help pay for education. And lastly, our work-study programs, which is money earned by you while you are in school. So these work-study programs are typically going to be jobs on campus that you become eligible for through the work-study program that you determine your eligibility from your FAFSA. We do have one more video that's going to kind of go over these a little bit more thoroughly. That's kind of why I didn't do that too much here. Let me find it. And if you need me to go back to this slide after the video, I can. All right, but this is it. So it's 8.5 minutes.
Let's talk a little more about how to pay for it. We know that you have to fill out the FAFSA before you can be considered for any kind of college funding, so we won't get into the particulars of that again. But you can always go to the PF 101 conversation on that subject if you have questions. Okay, so let's break this down. Let's think about financial aid a little bit like a tree. Hopefully that'll help you get a good picture in your head of how all these things are related. There are 3 main branches on our financial aid tree: gift aid, work study, and loans. To start off with, we're just going to talk about gift aid, but don't worry, we'll be coming back around to work study and loans in a few minutes. So, what's gift aid? Well, once again, our financial aid tree branches out in 2 different directions. Gift aid can be in the form of either grants or scholarships. We'll start off talking about grants first. Grants are money that does not have to be paid back, unless you withdraw from classes during the semester for which the grant was provided. The Pell Grant is probably the most common type of public grant. Pell Grants are funds made available by the federal government as part of your overall student aid package. Pell Grants are need-based, which means that they're available to low-income students and based on the amount of the student's expected family contribution, or EFC, the cost of the school, whether you attend full or part-time, and whether you attend for a full academic year. Remember, these grants must be paid back in full or in part if you withdraw from classes during the semester the grant was for. When you complete the FAFSA, you are automatically applying for a Pell Grant. Another type of federal grant is called the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. Whew, that's a mouthful. It's called the FSEOG for short, and it's an additional sum of money available only to those who have already qualified for the Pell Grant and demonstrate the most extreme financial need based on their EFC. Once again, the only way to apply for the FSEOG is to fill out the FAFSA. Let's go back to the scholarship branch of our tree now. Like grants, scholarships don't have to be repaid. Some are renewable, meaning that you continue to get the money each semester that you attend school, as long as you maintain the scholarship's required minimum GPA, while others are one-time awards. Scholarships typically either come from private sources or from the school you attend. Let's look at private scholarships first. These can come from corporations, community organizations, and nonprofits. Some of these are merit-based, which means that they're based on things like grades, volunteer work, and involvement in community and social organizations. Some of those private scholarships are need-based, which means that they're based strictly on the student's family income. Finally, some private scholarships are demographic-based, meaning that they're available to applicants in a particular category. This might be based on where you live or your ethnicity, whether or not you have children, or whether or not your parents went to college. Private scholarships are the only type of financial aid not covered by the FAFSA. You will need to search and apply for these on your own. There are several free online databases to help you find these private scholarships. Remember, there's no reason to pay for scholarship searches. There are plenty of free resources on the web for discovering them on your own. As for scholarships granted by your school, once again, the FAFSA is your starting point. When your school is determining your financial aid package, they'll look at your financial need, any grants or loans you may be eligible for, and then determine what they will offer in scholarship funding. Again, scholarships don't have to be paid back and are usually renewable as long as you continue to meet the eligibility requirements. That covers gift aid, which is all of the financial aid that under most circumstances need not be paid back. Work study is the most straightforward branch of our financial aid tree. Simply put, work study programs provide you with a job while you're enrolled in school. These programs are administered through your campus, and availability is determined by, you guessed it, the FAFSA. You're paid directly and may use work study money toward education-related expenses like tuition, fees, books, and room and board. All right, let's tackle loans. The loan branch in our financial aid tree splits in two smaller branches for public and private loans. Let's talk about public loans first, because they typically have much lower interest rates and much more favorable repayment terms than private loans. There are three main types of public financial aid loans. Your eligibility for these loans will be determined by completing the FAFSA. These loan types are Stafford, Perkins, and PLUS loans. First, let's take a look at the Stafford loan, which can be either subsidized or unsubsidized. The unsubsidized Stafford loan has a low variable interest rate and begins to accrue interest while you're in college. The interest that's accruing while you're going to school is usually just rolled into the principal of the loan, and the payments are deferred, which means that you don't have to start making payments as long as you're enrolled in school as at least a half-time student. There's a 6-month grace period after leaving school, after which loan repayment must begin. Subsidized loans are the same as the unsubsidized ones, but the government pays the interest that accrues while you're in school, instead of just having it rolled up into the principal of the loan. This, of course, means that you ultimately wind up paying less for your loan, since it's effectively not accruing any interest while you're in school. Subsidized loans, when they're available, are preferable to unsubsidized loans. In much the same way that the FSEOG that we discussed earlier is a grant for students with exceptional financial need, so too is our next type of loan. Eligibility for the Perkins loan is also determined by the FAFSA. The Perkins is the best college loan available in that it's completely subsidized. Again, meaning that no interest accrues while you're in school. It has a low fixed interest rate and a 10-year repayment period that begins 6 months after you leave school. The other type of financial aid loan available isn't a student loan at all. It's a loan that can be taken out by parents to help their children pay for college. These loans are called PLUS loans, and they're available to parents with an established history of good credit at a fixed interest rate. The maximum loan amount is determined by subtracting all other available financial aid, as determined by the school, from the total cost of attendance. The FAFSA is all you need to determine if you or your parents are eligible. Finally, as a last resort, there are private college loans available from traditional financial institutions like banks and credit unions. These loans typically have higher interest rates, shorter grace periods, origination fees, and may have penalties for prepayment of the loan. Some colleges have their own on-campus credit union that offers more favorable loan terms than larger banks or credit unions. There are several search engines out there specifically for private college loans. It's smart to do a lot of comparison shopping and make sure you know what you're signing up for ahead of time. Make sure you understand all fees, grace periods, and deferments, interest rates, and total loan costs, and options for consolidation after graduation. This sums up all of the various financial aid options that you have. Remember, it all begins with the FAFSA. You can use some terrific free search engines to find private financial aid, and there's
Okay, so let me go back to that last slide for you in case you need it still. Sorry about the dogs barking. Our fence fell over in the storm and my neighbor knocked on the door and my dogs went crazy. So that's what that was all about. So this is that last slide of today. If you didn't have enough time to copy it down, and most of that was covered in that video, I linked that video in our agenda for the week. I know there's a lot of information out there and it can be overwhelming. That might be a lot of new terms for you. So if, college is your route and you are applying for FAFSA, you'll end up getting an email of your financial aid package, and it'll tell you this is how much you're getting in grants. This is how much you will need to take out in loans. And then that video went over the other loans. Remember, grants are free unless you drop out during that semester, which I don't recommend doing. But that's free money. And a lot of it is income based on your parents and how much they are expected to contribute, your family expected contribution. But that is it for our notes and everything for today. So your homework tonight is from your book 1 through 21. Remember, you're doing that right after today's notes. So handwriting or typing, doesn't matter, your preference. And then we'll do section 3 tomorrow. If you have any questions on the notes, any of the homework problems, I am happy to stick around. But otherwise, I will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Bye, Ms. Rice.